You're sitting here watching this video, but part of you already knows what I'm about to say. That's not coincidence. It's remembrance. What if everything you've been taught about spiritual growth is backwards? What if you don't need to learn who you are? You need to remember. Ancient cultures across continents shared this secret for thousands of years before it was deliberately hidden. Today I'm sharing what took me 15 years to uncover. A technique so powerful it was labeled forbidden by those who wanted humanity to forget. But before I reveal this technique, you need to understand why it was hidden in the first place. In this video, I'll reveal the three-phase technique that awakens your soul's memory, a practice so powerful it was banned by those who wanted to maintain control over human consciousness. One of these phases alone transformed my entire understanding of reality, and it's something most spiritual teachers never mention because it threatens the very foundation of their authority. I discovered these practices after a decade of studying ancient texts that weren't meant for public eyes, manuscripts that survived only because they were hidden away or disguised as myths and fairy tales. What I found wasn't new knowledge, but the oldest wisdom on earth. That humans aren't meant to be taught who they are. They're meant to remember. By the end of this video, you'll understand why this technique was hidden, how it works on your consciousness, and exactly how to practice it in your daily life. You'll learn how to strip away the noise that keeps your soul's memory dormant and reconnect with a part of yourself that's been waiting to be recognized. This isn't about learning another spiritual concept. It's about remembering who you were before the world told you who to be. 1. The hidden history. Why would the most natural human ability be deliberately suppressed throughout history? Think about it. Across every ancient civilization, from the pyramids of Egypt to the temples of India, there exists a common thread: the belief that humans have forgotten something essential about themselves. This wasn't considered a tragedy or an accident, but a veil, a necessary part of the human journey. In ancient Egypt, the priests of the houses of life performed what modern historians sanitize as initiation rituals. But these weren't mere ceremonies. They were technologies of remembrance. Initiates would undergo a symbolic death, their bodies resting for hours while their consciousness was guided through subtle spiritual realms by a master. When these initiates returned to ordinary awareness, witnesses described them as reborn, not because they'd gained new knowledge, but because they'd remembered something ancient. They crossed the threshold between forgetting and remembering. The hieroglyphs tell us they called this the awakening of the Ka, the soul's recognition of itself. The Greeks had their own version. The Orphic mystery schools described the soul as trapped in the body, not as a punishment, but as part of a purification process. They taught specific breathing patterns that induced trance states, allowing the soul to temporarily free itself from its earthly identity and glimpse its divine origin. This wasn't philosophy, it was practice, and those who experienced it reported the same thing. I remembered who I was before I was born. In India, the rishis, those ancient seers who composed the Vedas, had a specific word for this: smriti. It doesn't translate to learning, but to remembering. To them, spiritual ignorance wasn't about lacking information, but about being disconnected from what the soul already knows. But then something happened. Around the 4th century, as empire building and organized religion spread across continents, these practices began to disappear from public knowledge. The techniques were broken apart, the symbols hidden in myths, and the core teachings sealed off as dangerous. Dangerous to whom? Not to you, not to the practitioner, but to systems that require your forgetting to maintain their power. Think about it. Once a soul remembers who it truly is, it can no longer be controlled through fear, through shame, through artificial hierarchies. A remembered soul stands in its own authority. And that's precisely why these techniques were labeled forbidden. Not because they harm you, but because they free you. What's fascinating is that these techniques weren't destroyed. They were hidden in plain sight. They were disguised as religious rituals, as folk traditions, as children's stories, as symbols on temple walls. They were fragmented so that no single tradition held the complete picture. But when you piece them back together, when you see the pattern across cultures and centuries, something remarkable emerges. A universal technology of remembrance that has nothing to do with belief and everything to do with direct experience. So what exactly were they hiding? What is this technique that was so powerful it had to be broken apart and buried in symbols? 2. The three-phase technique. Overview. The technique I'm about to share isn't something you learn, it's something you remember. Your soul already knows it. Think of your soul as a perfect melody, a unique, beautiful composition that's always playing. But right now, it's covered by layers of noise, interference, outside beliefs, past traumas, and conditioning from family, education, religion, and society. You can't hear the melody clearly because of all this static. This technique works like a tuner. It doesn't add anything new. It simply removes what blocks the sound, polishes the instrument, and brings everything into harmony. As it does this, that original melody, your true nature, starts to play again. What makes this approach different from most spiritual practices is that it's not about becoming something new or better. It's about uncovering what's already there. It's not about climbing a ladder to enlightenment. It's about removing the obstacles that make you forget you're already home. The technique has 3 main phases, and while they don't happen in a strict linear order, they are all essential. First, deprogramming the false self. This is where you identify and release the voices inside you that aren't really yours. Second, activating your inner sense. This is where you awaken the faculty of perception that connects you to your soul's memory. Third, resonance with your true name. This is where your vibration aligns with your original nature, triggering remembrance. What I'm about to share contradicts what most spiritual teachers claim. They often position themselves as gatekeepers to wisdom you don't have. But this technique reveals that the wisdom is already inside you. It's just been muffled and forgotten. Before I break down each phase, you need to understand something crucial about why this works. The reason most spiritual seekers spend decades searching without finding is that they're looking in the wrong direction. They're looking outward for what can only be found inward. They're trying to learn what can only be remembered. This isn't just semantics, it's a fundamental shift in approach. When you try to learn spirituality, you add more layers, more concepts, more beliefs. But when you focus on remembering, you strip away what isn't you until only your true nature remains. And that's the secret that makes this technique so powerful, and why those who benefit from your forgetting have worked so hard to keep it hidden. Phase 1. Deprogramming the false self. The hardest truth you'll face is that most of what you think is you isn't you at all. That voice in your head that criticizes your every move, the fears that keep you from taking risks, the desires that never seem to bring lasting fulfillment, the beliefs about what success looks like, the standards you measure yourself against, how many of these are truly yours, and how many were installed in you by parents, teachers, media, culture, religion, voices you internalized so deeply you mistake them for your own? This first phase, deprogramming the false self, is about getting brutally honest about what's really yours and what isn't. Here's how it works. Start by simply observing your thoughts without judgment. What are you thinking? What do you want? What are you afraid of? Then ask yourself this crucial question. Is this really mine? Or was it put on me by someone else? For example, that belief that you need to achieve certain things to be worthy. Where did that come from? That fear of being judged. Whose voice is that really? That constant dissatisfaction with your body. Is that your natural perspective? Or something you absorbed? This isn't about blaming others for your conditioning. It's about seeing clearly, so you can choose consciously. What's fascinating about this process is that you don't need to fight against these false voices. You just need to recognize them. What wasn't built from your true self can be taken apart by your true self, once you become aware. Let me share something most spiritual teachers won't tell you. Deprogramming isn't just about releasing negative thoughts. It's also about questioning your positive beliefs. That vision of spiritual success you're chasing? That image of the enlightened person you're trying to become? Those too might be programs, beautiful-looking cages that keep you seeking instead of finding. The most powerful question you can ask is, who would I be without this thought? Not who would you become? Who would you already be? What part of you is already free, already whole, already awake beneath these layers of programming? This phase requires radical honesty. You'll discover that some of your most cherished identities, the good person, the spiritual seeker, the helper, the achiever, might also be masks that keep you from remembering your true face. And here's what makes this phase so challenging. Every time you peel back a layer of false self, you'll face a moment of vertigo, a fear that without this identity, you'll disappear. But what actually happens is the opposite. As each false layer falls away, something more real, more alive, more authentically begins to emerge. This isn't about creating emptiness. It's about creating space for your true nature to breathe. Every moment you live from someone else's script is a moment your soul remains forgotten. Every decision you make from conditioning rather than clarity is a step away from remembrance. But don't worry about getting rid of every false program at once. This isn't about achieving perfect purity. It's about starting the process of seeing clearly. Even recognizing one thought that isn't truly yours begins a chain reaction of awakening. But deprogramming alone isn't enough. Once you clear some of the noise, you need to activate something that's been dormant within you. Phase 2. Activating your inner sense. What if you had a sense beyond your 5 senses? One specifically designed to perceive your true nature. This isn't fantasy. Every spiritual tradition speaks of it, though they name it differently. The third eye, the heart's intelligence, the witness consciousness. It's a faculty of perception that doesn't process external data, but recognizes internal truth. This inner sense isn't logical or emotional, it's direct perception. You don't force it awake. You tune into it. It's always been active, just beneath the threshold of your awareness. Think about those moments when you just knew something without knowing how you knew. That wasn't your mind figuring things out. It was this inner sense perceiving directly. So how do you activate it more consistently? The technique helps you awaken this sense using 4 primary methods. First, mindful breathing. But not the kind you've been taught before. Most meditation practices focus on calming the mind. This is different. It's about using breath as a bridge between worlds. Try this. Breathe in slowly through your nose, and as you do, imagine you're drawing in not just air, but consciousness itself. Hold for a moment at the top of the breath and feel that consciousness spreading throughout your body. Then exhale slowly through slightly parted lips, as if you're releasing everything that isn't truly you. This isn't just visualization, it's energetic reality. The breath literally carries the vibration that awakens remembrance. Second, silent rituals. These aren't elaborate ceremonies, but simple, repeated actions that you perform with complete presence. It could be lighting a candle each morning, walking barefoot on earth, or placing your hand on your heart before making decisions. The power isn't in the action itself, but in the quality of presence you bring to it. When you perform these simple rituals with undivided attention, they become doorways through which your inner sense awakens. Third, full embodiment. Your body isn't separate from your consciousness. It's the most tangible expression of it. When you're fully present in your body, feeling sensations, honoring its wisdom, moving with awareness, you create the conditions for remembrance. Most people live from the neck up, trapped in thought, but the body carries memories the mind cannot access. When you return to embodied presence, you tap into a knowing that precedes thinking. Fourth, and perhaps most powerful, is working with universal symbols. These aren't arbitrary images, but resonant forms that exist in the collective consciousness. The inner flame, the heart's lotus, the soul's mirror. When you visualize these symbols with focused intention, something remarkable happens. Your inner sense recognizes them as keys that unlock forgotten chambers of awareness. What's fascinating is that what you imagine with focus and devotion, your soul accepts as real. This imagination isn't fantasy. It's a bridge. These symbols aren't made up. They're universal images that bring ancient memories to life. For example, try this. Close your eyes and imagine a small flame at the center of your chest. See it clearly. Its color, its movement, its warmth. Now imagine that flame growing brighter, expanding until it fills your entire chest cavity with light. Feel the warmth of that light dissolving any tension or resistance it encounters. This isn't just a pretty visualization. It's activating actual energetic pathways in your subtle body. The flame is a universal symbol for the soul's consciousness, and by engaging with it through focused imagination, you're literally turning on dormant circuits of awareness. This inner sense is what connects you to everything you've forgotten about yourself. It's the faculty through which remembrance happens. Without it active, spiritual teachings remain concepts rather than lived experiences, but the most powerful phase is still to come. Phase 3. Resonance with your true name. Every spiritual tradition speaks of a hidden name, not a word you speak aloud, but a vibration unique to your soul. The Egyptians called it the Ren, one of the 5 parts of the soul. The Kabbalists spoke of the true name that's whispered only by angels. The Sufis described it as the secret name known only to God and to you, when you remember. This isn't metaphorical. Every being has a sacred frequency, a specific vibrational signature that is their original nature. When you call it correctly, not with words but by embodying a certain state, you instantly recognize it. It's like a door closed for centuries suddenly opening. You don't remember with your mind, but with your vibration. You feel a powerful certainty. This is me. I've always been this way. I just forgot. So how do you find this frequency? How do you call your true name? First, understand that you're not searching for something new, but recognizing something ancient. Your true name isn't created, it's remembered. The technique teaches that this remembrance happens through resonance. When you bring your current vibration into alignment with your original vibration, recognition is automatic and unmistakable. Think of it like this. If you strike a tuning fork and hold it near another fork of the same frequency, the second will begin to vibrate without being touched. That's resonance. And it's how your current consciousness reconnects with your soul's true vibration. There's a warning that comes with this knowledge. This phase isn't about feeling good. It's about feeling real. When you resonate with your true name, you encounter not just your light, but your shadow too. You face unfinished choices, unhealed wounds, and aspects of yourself you've denied. This isn't punishment. It's freedom. You can't embrace your whole soul without facing your whole self. That's why many traditions say this practice is dangerous for beginners, because facing your soul honestly takes spiritual maturity. But here's the practice. Find moments of complete stillness. Not just physical stillness, but stillness of mind and emotion. In that quiet space, ask not with words, but with your whole being. Who am I beneath all names and forms? Then listen, not with your ears, but with your entire field of consciousness. Feel for a vibration, a resonance that feels more like home than anything you've ever known. When you touch it even briefly, something irreversible happens. Part of you awakens and begins to watch from a deeper, calmer, and more real place. You start to recognize the difference between your conditioned self and your true nature. At this stage, those who practice deeply often enter a conscious trance, not losing yourself, but experiencing expanded awareness. The soul takes charge of what you perceive. You sense your body, but also notice your surroundings from a slight distance. You think, but thought no longer controls you. It's like your consciousness steps back from your ego, observing from a quiet center rather than being caught in the periphery of experience. From this quiet place, everything gains new meaning. Emotions become clearer, perception widens, time feels looser, sudden intuitions arise, and memories from past lives or ancestors appear. Knowledge you never studied but seem to carry. This is the deepest part of the technique. It's no longer about practicing, but about living from this remembered state. You start making decisions from your true center, rather than from conditioning. Relationships become more honest, fears less intense, and your actions align with your authentic nature, rather than with expectations. When you resonate with your true name, you can no longer be controlled by external forces. The opinions of others lose their grip. The need for validation dissolves. The fear of death diminishes. You recognize yourself as both unique and universal, a distinct note in the cosmic symphony. This isn't mystical poetry, it's the practical reality of what happens when your vibration aligns with your original nature. And it's precisely why systems of control have worked so hard to keep this knowledge fragmented and hidden. Now let me show you how to bring this technique into your everyday life. 6. 5. Practical daily steps. Awakening isn't a one-time event. It's a practice. Here's how to live it daily. The journey of remembrance doesn't end with a spiritual experience, no matter how profound. True awakening is bringing that remembrance into every aspect of your life, turning the extraordinary into your ordinary state of being. These 5 practices aren't rigid rules, but living principles. When followed with intention and persistence, they maintain the state of remembrance even in the busiest and most challenging parts of life. First, practice active silence. The soul remembers best in silence. Not just the absence of sound, but the silence of full, undivided attention. Most people mistake silence for emptiness, but true silence is the most full state possible. Take a few minutes daily to be with yourself without distractions. This isn't meditation as you've been taught. There's no goal of emptying your mind or achieving some special state. Simply be present with what is, without trying to change it. Don't seek visions or experiences. Just breathe, watch, and allow. This sanctuary of attention is where the echo of your true name comes through most clearly. I discovered this accidentally during a 3-day power outage in my apartment. With no internet, no electricity, and eventually a dead phone, I was forced into silence. By the 3rd day, something had shifted. Not because I'd learned anything new, but because the constant noise had subsided enough for me to hear what was already there. You don't need a power outage. You just need the courage to disconnect regularly and face yourself without distraction. Second, turn actions into ceremony. Most people divide life into spiritual moments and ordinary moments. This practice dissolves that boundary by bringing full presence to everyday actions: eating, walking, working, talking. When you perform these actions from your center rather than from habit, they become acts of remembrance. The key question is, am I acting from a mask or from my soul? For example, when you eat, are you just consuming food, or are you fully experiencing nourishment? When you speak, are you talking from social programming, or are you expressing your authentic truth? When you live from your soul, even washing dishes becomes sacred. It's not about what you do, but about the quality of presence you bring to it. Third, mind what you feed your mind. Everything that enters through your senses shapes your inner vibration, the temple where your soul's memory shows up. Most people consume mental and emotional input without discrimination, then wonder why they can't maintain higher awareness. Clean up your environment, physical and digital. Care for your attention like an alchemist tending a fire. Be selective about the books you read, the media you consume, the conversations you engage in, and the environments you frequent. The fourth practice is the one most people resist, but it's the key to everything. Speak less and from deeper within. Words carry vibration. When you speak without awareness, you disperse energy that could be used for remembrance. Most conversation is just the exchange of conditioning, people's programs talking to other people's programs. This practice isn't about becoming silent, but about ensuring your voice comes from where your soul lives, not from habit or expectation. Don't repeat others' words or speak from social scripts. Let your speech emerge from that quiet center you've been cultivating. Words spoken from remembrance have the power to awaken remembrance in others. I noticed this shift in my own life when people started commenting that my voice sounded different, deeper, more resonant. It wasn't a physical change, but an energetic one. I was speaking from a different place within myself. Finally, act as if you already remember. This might sound like pretending, but it's actually a powerful form of invocation. Live as though you carry an ancient legacy, even before you fully understand it. Walk, love, and interact from this place of knowing. Remembering doesn't come from searching, it comes through embodiment. When you act as if you remember, you create the vibrational conditions for actual remembrance to occur. I saw this principle in action when working with a group of artists who were all experiencing creative blocks. I asked them to spend one day acting as if they were already the artist they aspired to be. Not in terms of success, but in terms of creative freedom and authentic expression. The results were immediate and profound. By embodying the vibration of their creative essence, they bypassed the mental obstacles that had been blocking them. These 5 practices might seem simple, but they're revolutionary when applied consistently. They don't require special conditions or retreat from the world. In fact, they work most powerfully right in the midst of ordinary life. What happens after you remember isn't what most people expect. There's no permanent state of bliss or escape from life's challenges. Instead, there's a profound shift in how you experience those challenges. From the center rather than from the periphery. From remembrance rather than from forgetting. The ultimate purpose of remembering isn't to transcend your humanity, but to fully embody it. To bring the infinite into finite expression. To live as both human and divine without contradiction. You're not here to learn. You're here to remember. And that remembering has already begun. The moment you started watching this video, something inside you resonated with this truth. Not because my words are special, but because they touched something that was already there. A knowing that precedes all teaching. When you remember who you are, everything changes. You stop needing approval because you're connected to something greater. Stop needing answers because your silence has grown wise. Stop chasing love because you realize you are love. This isn't an empty promise. It's an invitation. The soul's path is beautiful, but not always comfortable. It strips away what isn't you and puts you face to face with what you've hidden, so you can choose who you really are. I experienced this firsthand during a period of profound loss when everything I identified with was taken away. Career, relationship, home, health. In that stripped-down state, with nothing left to hold on to, I discovered something unexpected. A presence that remained when all else fell away. Not a belief or an idea, but a living reality that had been there all along, waiting to be recognized. That recognition didn't make the challenges disappear, but it completely transformed how I experienced them. I was no longer at the mercy of circumstances, but rooted in something that circumstances couldn't touch. This is available to you right now, not in some distant future when you've perfected yourself, but in this very moment, beneath the noise of your thinking. If something inside you stirred while watching this, if something whispered, "Yes, this is for me," don't let your mind snuff out that spark. That stirring isn't just emotion, it's recognition. Your soul remembering itself. Subscribe to this channel. Like this video. Share it with anyone who needs to remember, because there's no revolution greater than an awakened soul. When you remember, others will follow. And without violence, dogma, or forced religion, the world will change from the inside, from the place where everything started, from remembrance. The most forbidden truth isn't complicated. It's simple, direct, and close. And most of all, it's what those who want you to stay asleep fear the most. You're not what you've been told. You never were. You're a vibrant expression of consciousness itself, a note in a cosmic symphony still playing. Your ancient memory is dressed in the present, and you forgot. We all forgot. But now, you remember.